Hello, friends, and let's get started.
Matt once again stared tiredly at the laptop screen. The mail was empty. Current affairs didn't require urgent attention, but instead of relief, he felt only anxiety. Lauren was bustling around in the kitchen, preparing dinner, as always, in complete silence. When he got up and entered the small, modestly furnished kitchen, it was business as usual. She was carefully wiping down the cutting board with her lips pressed together grimly. "Lauren," he began cautiously, "is everything all right? You've been brooding for days now." She didn't turn around right away. Her eyes, usually bright and cheerful, now seemed dull. Lauren thoughtfully fixed a strand of hair that had fallen over her forehead and smiled sadly. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about us," she said without looking at him. "About us?" Matt asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yes, about us." "Matt, don't you feel like we're at a standstill? It's the same thing. Work, dinner, bed. It's like I'm reading the same page over and over again, but I can't turn it." Matt frowned. This kind of talk was out of character for Lauren. She usually accepted their daily routine in silence. No questions asked, no complaints. He stepped closer to her, feeling a slight chill run down his spine. "Do you want to change something?" he asked cautiously. Lauren lowered her gaze, as if she were afraid he might resent or protest her words. I was thinking that maybe we should try something new." Her voice was quiet, but there was an unfamiliar firmness to it. "New things? Like what?" Matt felt a slight tension building inside him. Lauren took her time answering, as if she were weighing every word. "Don't get any ideas," she began, raising her hands in a conciliatory gesture. "It's just, I've heard of couples who have a little, let's say light play, meeting other people, flirting, teasing each other to shake things up. It's just a game, you know?" Matt blinked confusedly. It had always amazed him how Lauren could spout bizarre ideas with such disarming confidence that her words made almost sense. But right now, he didn't even know what to answer. "Light flirting?" he interjected. Lauren nodded quickly. "Yes, nothing serious. Just, let's try to meet another couple. We'll drink wine, laugh, flirt a little, and then we'll go home like nothing happened." She suddenly looked into his eyes. Her face seemed full of sincerity and hope. "I think that might help us." Matt frowned. That sounded strange, but at the same time, he saw something in her eyes that didn't let him say no right away. Lauren had really seemed unhappy these past few months. Maybe this would really bring about a change, at least for her sake. "Okay," he finally said. "Just nothing serious, okay? Just give it a try." "Sure," Lauren exclaimed, her face lighting up with joy. "It'll be fun, I promise." Matt watched her hurriedly finish preparing dinner, almost dancing in place. It was the first time he'd seen her in such high spirits in a long time. Though he still had a nasty shadow of doubt lingering inside, he didn't voice his thoughts. Lauren was happy, and that meant more than his own discomfort. They didn't discuss the subject again at dinner. But there was something new in the air, something subtly unsettling, something that made Matt wonder if he'd done the right thing by agreeing. Matt raised his glass, tapping it lightly with Lauren and their new acquaintances, Jack and Cindy. The scent of expensive wine was in the air, and the soft light of the lamps created an almost intimate atmosphere. Jack was telling jokes, Cindy was laughing, Lauren was smiling. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. At first glance, Matt felt a little self-conscious at first. The subject of the flirtation they'd started the evening for was a little embarrassing. But he tried to relax, to participate in the conversation, to find appropriate jokes, to watch Lauren enthusiastically pick up Jack's lines. She seemed revitalized, as if she had shed the weight of a long routine. At one point, Cindy, laughing gaily, told a story about her recent trip to Paris, and Lauren suddenly interrupted her halfway through. "Oh, Paris. I dream of going there," she said with a new sparkle in her eyes, and even her voice sounded softer than usual. Matt raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He'd never heard Lauren talk about Paris with such passion, or about anything else, come to think of it. Jack seconded the topic. He and Lauren passionately discussed the quaint streets, the cozy cafes, while Cindy only smiled and nodded. Matt felt uncomfortable. Lauren seemed completely focused on Jack. Her laughter was getting a little louder, her hand mechanically fixing her hair. She picked up her glass more often than necessary, though she usually preferred to drink slowly. Matt tried to join the conversation, to interject a few remarks, but Lauren waved him away. Not rudely, not deliberately, but enough to make him feel oddly detached. She wasn't doing anything overt, but something about her demeanor was different. By the middle of the evening, Matt couldn't help but notice how Lauren had changed. She often leaned closer to Jack, her smile growing wider. Every now and then their gazes lingered a little longer than normal conversation required. Matt saw this and tried to convince himself that he was making it up as he went along, that it was just part of the very game they'd gotten together for in the first place. "Anyone want more wine?" Jack asked, abruptly interrupting their conversation. "I'll go," Lauren offered, rising so easily and effortlessly that Matt didn't even have time to object. "I can grab more glasses so I don't have to come back twice." "I'll help," Jack said, smiling. "I'm not comfortable alone." Before Matt could say anything, they were both heading toward the kitchen, leaving him sitting at the table with a smiling Cindy. He sighed, trying not to show how much it hurt him. "They're just going to get drinks." "Just going for drinks," he repeated to himself. Lauren and Jack disappeared around the corner, and Cindy started to say something about her job, but her words sounded muffled, out of earshot. Matt heard glasses clinking in the kitchen, someone saying something softly, and then there was a short pause. An inner voice sounded in his head. "What's going on in there?" But he immediately restrained himself. It seemed to him that she was laughing too much, stared at Jack for too long. But that was just his paranoia, wasn't it? Matt clenched his fingers together, trying to calm down, but his heart beat a little faster. Cindy was saying something about her project, and he kept trying to hear a word, the slightest sound that would explain why Lauren was delayed. Matt woke up the next morning when the sun was already streaming through the thick curtains. He usually got up first, made coffee, and cooked scrambled eggs for two, but today something had gone differently. Lauren was already out of bed. The empty coffee pot, the tightly closed bathroom door, and the quiet murmur of water. She looked like she'd been in there for a while. "Lauren?" he called out, opening the door slightly. There was a slight hint of concern in his voice. "Yeah, I'm almost done," she answered a little quieter than he was used to. Finished washing up, Lauren stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a fluffy towel, and barely looked at her husband. Usually she kissed him briefly before breakfast, or at least touched his hand fleetingly as she passed him. But not today. She threw on her robe and headed for the closet without even looking up. "Are you okay?" Matt asked cautiously. "Yeah, I'm fine," she answered quickly, as if she'd prepared for the question. Lauren looked away, pausing for a moment in front of the clothes rack, and then added, "Just a little tired after last night." Matt nodded, but something in her voice, in her movements, made him wary. He watched as she slowly went through her t-shirts, as if choosing the right outfit for the day they were both going to spend at home. Lauren always made her decisions quickly. She wasn't the type to waver between different shades for long periods of time. That wasn't the case today. As she left the room, leaving him alone, Matt suddenly noticed that he couldn't remember her face as she walked past. He remembered her hair, the smell of her shampoo, but her gaze, no. Lauren seemed to be avoiding his eyes. The sensation was almost physical, her silence, her reticence. Matt forced himself to distract himself, to delve deeper into his book, but his thoughts returned to her again and again. Over the course of the week, the oddities piled up. Lauren was staying late after work more and more often. She used to call him, explaining that she was engrossed in a project, but now her explanations became vague and her calls less frequent. If Matt asked her what she'd been doing that evening, her answers were evasive, as if she'd thought out every word in advance. Lingered with coworkers. "We had a little brainstorming session," she said once, still on the phone. "Then I stopped by the store. You said you were out of coffee. But you never bought any," he pointed out. Lauren shrugged. "I couldn't find the right kind. I'll look again tomorrow." The next morning she left the house a little earlier than usual, citing an early meeting, even though Matt knew her office didn't open until 9. Later that day, he stopped by her office on the pretext of returning a forgotten coffee mug. It turned out that all of her coworkers were on time, but Lauren herself was almost an hour late. Her assistant said she was in a private meeting. Matt just nodded and left without waiting for more details. Another little thing, another oddity. Lauren, who had never been interested in fitness before, suddenly started missing the gym in the evenings. She'd bring her gym bag with her, but when she got home, she didn't look sweaty at all. Her explanations became increasingly dry. "You don't ask so much," she once said when he tried to find out why she was coming home so late. "I just want to get in shape." It didn't sound convincing. There wasn't the same annoyance or joking tone in her voice. There was something else, something Matt couldn't describe, but he could feel it, and his suspicions were growing. One evening, when Lauren had left her phone on the kitchen table, Matt noticed a message on the screen in passing. The sender was a name he'd never seen before. The text was short, but everything about it made Matt tense. "Thanks for yesterday. It was awesome. Shall we do it again?" He picked up the phone, but before he could read more, the screen went blank. Matt set the device down as if burned and felt a deafening heaviness building in his chest. Suddenly he thought, why not check her bag? It wasn't his habit to rummage through his wife's personal belongings, but something in him clicked. He imagined he'd find anything in there: forgotten shopping lists, random flyers, the old minted coins she always carried for good luck. What he discovered, however, was far less innocuous. At the bottom of the bag, under a book with a notepad cover, was a neatly folded restaurant bill. Matt pulled it out, hoping to see the name of their favorite cafe, but instead his gaze stopped on the line La Belle. It was a place they discussed for a long time, but they'd never gone there. It was too expensive and pretentious. But here it was, the check, dated yesterday. 2 courses, wine, dessert. Matt sank slowly into a chair, holding a white piece of paper that suddenly weighed a ton. Questions swirled in his head. Who was she with? Why hadn't she told him? He remembered Lauren telling him she'd stayed at work late into the evening. So she was lying. Matt could feel his trust in her crumbling slowly, with a thud, dragging sound like cracking ice. When Lauren got home, he met her in the living room. She was surprised to see him sitting motionless in his chair. "What do you like this for?" she asked, placing her bag on the table. Matt silently picked up the check and showed it to her. She froze for a moment, but then reacted quickly. "You went through my bag?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Lauren, what is this?" His voice was low, restrained, but there was clearly a sense of menace in it. She looked at him, then at the check, and back at him again, then shrugged. "It's just lunch with a colleague. We were discussing a project." Matt frowned. It didn't sound believable, and he couldn't hide his disbelief. "A coworker? In a place like this?" "Lauren, it could have been our dinner, but I didn't even know you went there." Her face took on a hard expression. She turned away, tucked her hair behind her ear, and began. "I don't have to account for every move I make, Matt. You know that very well. And it's not what you think. It's completely harmless." "Harmless? Then why didn't you tell me about it? Why am I just finding out about it by accident?" Lauren stopped talking, biting her lip. There was a flicker of something Matt couldn't name, but desperation in her gaze. But then she straightened up sharply. "I'm tired, Matt. You're questioning me even though there's no problem." "Tired? You go out to expensive restaurants with someone, but you don't even tell me, and it's no problem? Are you serious, Lauren?" She turned away to go into the other room, but he stepped forward, not letting her pass. "Lauren, we'll talk this through here now." She stopped, but didn't turn toward him. A heavy, sharp silence hung in the room. "No, Matt, I don't want to discuss anything." Her voice sounded muffled, like she was struggling to hold something inside. "You've already decided to blame me for everything, haven't you? Well, what do you want to hear? I have nothing to say to you." Matt felt something inside him burst. He didn't yell, didn't raise his voice, but his words cut through the air like a sharp knife. "You tell me the truth, Lauren. Just tell me the truth." She turned around, met his gaze, but there was no longer the same confidence in her eyes. She shook her head and walked out of the room without another word, leaving Matt standing there, feeling his world fall apart. Matt stared at her back, feeling the anger rising inside, hot and pressing. He took a couple of quick steps and caught up with Lauren in the kitchen, where she was shoving dirty plates into the dishwasher as if nothing had happened. Her actions seemed detached, like she was trying to escape not only the conversation, but herself. "Lauren, I'm serious." His voice sounded harsh, but there was pain in it too. "What the hell is going on?" She slowly closed the dishwasher, straightened up, and finally turned to him. Her face reflected a mixture of fatigue and alienation. You want the truth? Okay. The truth is, I got bored, Matt. Everything got boring. We got boring. As if her confession released a long-accumulated pressure, Lauren continued without letting him get a word in edgewise. Do you even remember the last time we did anything together, anything real? It's all just work, home, work, dinner. It's the same thing day after day. I just wanted something different, something new. Matt could feel his insides boiling. Her words sounded like blows to his self-esteem, to his idea of their marriage. He stepped closer, his face tense. Were you looking for something else behind my back? His voice grew louder, his breathing hitching. Didn't you think you could talk to me instead? Tell me what you were missing? Instead of. He couldn't finish the sentence. Every word he wanted to say seemed dirty, defiled. Lauren rolled her eyes, her patience seeming to break. Talk? And what would that change? Would you just start surprising me every day, having romantic candlelit dinners? Would that get the spark back? We both know it wouldn't. You're too stuck in your ways. We're stuck, and I just wanted to feel wanted. With those words, Lauren tried to step around him, but Matt intercepted her arm. Her words didn't just hurt, they cut to the heart. He searched her eyes for something, remorse, regret, any spark of the old Lauren, the one he'd had when they'd first married. But instead, all he saw was weariness. You could just leave, he said quietly, finally letting her go. If you were so fed up with everything, you could have just said so. Why did it have to be like this? Why? Lauren didn't answer. She stood across from him, her gaze cold. In that moment, Matt realized this conversation wasn't going to change anything. His trust was already broken, and her words stuck in his mind like broken arrows. He stepped back to the window, feeling something inside him finally breaking. Matt stood at the window, unable to take his eyes off the gray cityscape. A cool breeze blew through the barely closed sash, but he didn't even try to close it. The silence pressed on his ears. He turned around, glanced around the room, and stopped at Lauren. She still hadn't moved, but now her shoulders were tense and her hands were clasped tightly together. I have nothing more to say to you, she said quietly and turned to leave. Her footsteps seemed muffled, as if they were walking not on the floor but on his inner turmoil. She took her coat, leisurely slipped it on, and then picked up her bag from the coffee table. Matt remained standing by the window, making no attempt to stop her. He just watched as she headed for the door. She didn't look back. The latch clicked and the door closed, leaving a faint rustle behind it. Matt stepped away from the window, sat in a chair, and covered his face with his hands. Everything seemed to empty with her gone. Even the air felt different, dense, and stuffy. It was suddenly clear to him that their conversation was over. Everything that could be said had been said. Now all that was left was to sit in that silence, staring at the closed door and trying to figure out what to do next. Matt sat in the chair, looking at the door Lauren had just hidden behind. She didn't slam it shut. She just closed it quietly, leaving a slight draft behind her. There was silence in the room, broken only by the tapping of his fingers on the armrest. He stared at one point, not noticing the evening light melting outside the window. Time seemed to stop, leaving him alone with himself. Her forgotten cell phone still lay on the coffee table. He remembered looking at the message he hadn't had time to read a few days ago and felt a strange relief. Now he didn't care anymore. He didn't want to guess anymore, to make theories, to try to figure things out. He had all the answers, and they were all the answers he had feared. Matt got up and walked into the living room. On the wall hung pictures of them together, smiling faces on their wedding day, a trip to Yosemite Park, their anniversary dinner. Those images, captured moments of their lives, seemed distant now, as if they belonged to an estranged couple. He didn't want to take them down, didn't want to put them away in a drawer. Let them hang. Let them remind him of what had happened. He felt a strange, almost painful pleasure at the thought. He went back to the bedroom, sat on the bed, and leaned forward, hiding his face in his palms. It seemed that every word they'd exchanged, every argument they'd had, every excuse she'd made, was now echoing in his head, wave after wave. He could feel something in him shattering, but with that shattering came something new, some stark clarity. His cell phone vibrated on the bedside table. A coworker was reminding him of a meeting tomorrow. Matt opened the message, quickly replied, and put the phone away. Work, routine, it all seemed strange now, like his life didn't fit into that framework anymore. Everything that had seemed important before now seemed petty and meaningless. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but he felt that everything would be different. The room grew darker. Shadows stretched across the floor, touched the walls. Matt got up and turned on the lamp. Soft light filled the space, but it felt empty. There was something frightening yet liberating about that emptiness. He stepped out onto the balcony, breathing in the fresh air. People were passing by below, laughing, discussing something. He stared at them, not understanding how they could live so simply. But then he felt a slight, almost imperceptible relief. For a moment, it seemed to him that there was something ahead. The future he had feared now seemed inevitable, but not so terrible. He stared out at the lights of the evening city for a long time, trying to extract one simple answer from it all. What now? But instead of an answer, only one thought came. Tomorrow I'll start over. Without saying it out loud, he went into the room and closed the door. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.